Hey everyone, it's Steph. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the books that I read for the month of February. So February was a lighter reading month for me. I read 16 books this month. There were some really great romances for the Valentine's Day holiday, as well as just some really great books that I wanted to share with you. So, without further ado, let's get started. The first book I read for the month of February is Suits and Sparks Plugs by Aspen Hadley. I'm going to be honest with you, I almost didn't pick up this book because I'm not totally enamored with the cover, but I will tell you that the story is really great. The basic premise is that there's this girl in this small town whose parents are going through a really challenging time. So she is kind of supporting herself, working at a small town diner. She's dating this guy who's this big suit company guy and is very affluent. And then we get to see the guy who she went to school with, a few years older than her, who owns the mechanic shop down the street from the diner. And we have the small town vibes. It's reminded me a lot of Stars Hollow and that kind of environment, which was really fun to read about. And then this mechanic, I want to say, has a reputation that's like Jess from Gilmore Girls, where it's like he's got this bad boy reputation, and we get to see how their relationship develops throughout the story. So we end up having this love triangle theme, and we end up seeing a lot of really great development. It had a lot of great character growth, great positive female friendship representation, which I loved, and finding joy in the small moments of life, which I really enjoyed. So definitely recommend if you're looking for a clean or closed door romance story. This was really sweet, and I'm definitely going to read more by this author. Next up, we have Brave Enough by Katie Gardner. I loved this book. This book was written by a woman who had childhood cancer, so she wanted to write about what it was like to go through childhood cancer and then survive it. So the story is not about cancer diagnosis, what's going to happen next. This is about dealt with a cancer diagnosis, we overcame it, now what does my life look like? I really enjoyed seeing the supportive relationships and just see this girl who was extremely serious about becoming a dancer, and that's all she has expected out of her life. They end up finding cancer in her leg, and she ends up finding this really great supportive community of people who embrace her and help support her throughout this journey. She ends up in particular forming a better relationship with one of the guys who she goes to school with, who volunteers at the hospital. He sees in her what he went through a little bit when he went through cancer several years earlier. So we get to see how those two can support one another through the trials that they are each facing. There's a lot of great conversations with this group of friends who all survived different forms of childhood cancer. A lot of great discussions about accessibility, mobility aids, and just finding a place to belong socially, physically, and finding a place to fit in the world. So it was so good. I thoroughly love this story. There are content warnings of some drug addiction with one of the characters that does end up being overcome, but it does talk a lot about the challenges with that as well. But it's so good, so worth it, and I thoroughly enjoyed this read. Next up, we have Listen to Your Heart by Casey West. I love Casey West. Nice and awesome, sweet romance stories. This is young adult. And this story was about a girl and her friend who end up taking a podcasting course in her senior year of high school as an elective. They end up giving advice to students, and there ends up being a potential love interest. There are these two guys on the horizon, but it's not a love triangle. And what I really enjoyed about this story was it kept me guessing as to what was going to happen. It was not easily predictable of which guy she was going to end up with. It was not easily predictable as to how things were going to unravel throughout the story. It was a fun story, a sweet story, so cute for Valentine's Day and around that time, and it was just the light and fluffy romance that my heart needed in the middle of February. Then we had the sequel to Brave Enough. This is called, oh my goodness, Finding Balance. That's what it's called. Finding Balance is a more recent publication of the author. I'm going to say this just came out within the last 6 months or a year. So this was written after Brave Enough, but technically takes place before Brave Enough. So this is more like a prequel, even though Goodreads has it as a sequel. But it's about one of the characters who ends up losing her leg, and this is about her journey to finding more accessible schooling, more accessible places around her. A lot of talk about mobility aids, a lot of discussions about prosthetics as prosthetic limbs, as well as mobility aids the inclusion or lack thereof of accessibility in school systems. She ends up changing schools during this school experience and seeing the way that other high schoolers perceive her as she walks into a new building where no one has seen her before. And it talks a lot about the injustices of disability treatment and the way that society does not always embrace people with disabilities and make a space for them to feel included. So I really, really enjoyed this story. This cover is really great. I love the vibrant colors. I love that we see someone on this cover who just looks different, and we get to see a better idea from just this cover alone of what the story is about, as opposed to Brave Enough, which doesn't really tell you too much about the story and its disability inclusion, but they're both fantastic stories. The romance in this one was a little bit harder to read because in the first book, Brave Enough, we already see these two together as a happy couple, so you know they're going to end up together by the end of the story. But in this story, they go through a lot of hardships before they get to their happy place, and I'm just so glad they're in their happy place now because their journey was quite one to read about. But I thoroughly enjoyed both of these stories and would absolutely recommend to anyone who is even remotely interested in reading a romance that has a character with disability and disability inclusion. We also get to see a disability accessible camp for kids, which is based off of Camp Sunshine in real life, and it's called Camp Cancer in the books, and we get to see a place where kids can just be kids and their disabilities don't impede them from doing everything they want to do, which is just wonderful, and the world needs to be more like that. So good stuff. Next up we have A Taste for Love. This was a super cute, I believe this is a debut novel. This is described as a combination between Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, The Great British Bake Off, and Jenny Han. That was such an apt description of what this was. This was a great young adult story, romance story. This has a baking competition. Basically, the Darcy character ends up being a part of this competition, and our Elizabeth character and her mother are judges for this competition. I really enjoyed seeing the development of the story. It was sweet, it was cute. I definitely recommend this story. It was so fun, it was light and sweet, and it was just what I was hoping it would be. So I definitely enjoyed this story and very glad that I got a chance to read this. Next up we have Jane in Love. So I did not know what to expect with this story other than knowing that this had Jane Austen as a character in the story and it had to do with time travel. This book is about Jane being transported from her own time period in Bath, England to present day Bath, England, where they are making a movie of one of her books. So we get to see Jane meet these two siblings. The more that Jane gets established in the real world, in the contemporary setting, her literary contributions to society are starting to disappear. If she is going to continue staying in the present day, then her legacy as a female author is going to be erased from history. So then she's at this crossroads and seeing, first of all, if she can get home, and then is that something she still wants to pursue. This was a little bit of a bittersweet romance, but I still thought it was very good. Look into what it was like for Jane during that time period, what it was like for her in Bath, where apparently she hated being in Bath and she didn't like the social and relationship constrictions of the day, the societal expectations of the day. It made me think more about Jane as a person as opposed to Jane as a literary icon. It made me think about her in a more human sense, which is similar to Hamilton and how Hamilton makes him a living, breathing person. I felt like this book did the same with that for me with Jane Austen, which is really cool to see. The history was really great, and the way that she adapted to the contemporary setting, there were a lot of really funny moments. Like, she just doesn't understand why things are so bright and why people's teeth look so... She comments on people's teeth all the time, or cell phones, and she's like, what the heck is this? So it's really funny to see how she is just shocked by everything. It's really funny to see her adaptation to the present time period, and also interesting to see how that story develops. There is one thing towards the end of the book which I didn't totally agree with. I didn't think that that was in Jane's character to do one thing that she did, but overall I think this was a great story and I really enjoyed reading it. And as someone who loves history, who loves Jane Austen stories, this was a really fun read for me. Next up we have Pride. So this was a really great adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. I want to say this was set in Brooklyn Heights, and this was about the whole story of Pride and Prejudice told from an African American perspective. So we get to see a whole different cast of characters tell this story and have their whole different dynamic. It was really interesting to see how this was adapted for a city neighborhood when we have Bingley and Darcy in the original story are brothers in this story, which worked really well, and they end up moving into a refurbished home in the city. And it's really interesting to see the social classes, then the way that they interact with one another, the difference in their upbringing, the difference in their schools, the difference in their expectations for where they're going next after high school, because they're both high school students. So I really thought that was interesting. I really enjoyed listening to the audiobook format of this. I thought it made it really just come to life in a different way, which was really cool. And I really enjoyed seeing how this story was imaginative and creative and original in its own way, which I thought was really cool on the part of the author, and definitely gives us a lot of variety and diversity for Austen retellings. So I thought that was really neat. This is Falling for Your Fake Fiance. Super cute, so fun, so great in terms of the banter, the wittiness of these two characters, and the heart to the characters, the development of them personally, as well as in their relationship is just so awesome. It's so good. Loved this story. Getting to see the development of his character, getting to see how he thinks and sees the world as opposed to him being a side character in the previous book. I really, really enjoyed seeing his character development as a mature adult figuring out what he wants in the world. And then I really liked seeing her growth as well and how she comes into her own through trying circumstances. This features a Great Dane, which was so fun, and it was fun to see how this fake dating story turns into a very, very sweet romance. She is very much a book lover, and I always enjoy reading books about book lovers. So we see a lot of times in this book she's reading Shakespeare or she's reading other classic books, and she integrates all these vocabulary words into her dialogue. He's always commenting on them. And it's super cute, super fun. Loved reading it and loved seeing these two fall for one another. It was the cutest. So good. Obviously I liked it, and I can't wait for more from this author, which leads me to the novella that she ended up writing over the holidays. This is called The 12 Holidays. There we go. The 12 Holidays. This was super cute. This is obviously much shorter because it's a novella, but still so good. There's a little bit of fake dating about 2/3 of the way through the story, but this is primarily about a girl who ends up going to surprise her boyfriend with this cute little list she found on a blog of holidays, 12 ideas for you to do with a significant other to celebrate the Christmas season. And they're all cutesy Christmas holiday things. She ends up doing a lot of this list with her friend who she's been friends with forever. It's cute, it's fun, it's light, and it was funny. Like, this author is just so funny with her rom-coms in this series. I thoroughly enjoyed the opportunities to laugh, and it was a super great combination of romance and humor and lots of heart. So definitely enjoyed this. And yes, I realize it's a Christmas story, and I read it in February, but it wasn't so Christmassy that it felt weird reading in February. We're going to skip over a few books that I felt meh about, and we're going to go to the last book that I read this month, which was so well done. This is Tamara Alexander's newest book, Colors of Truth. That's what it's called. This is about two sisters living in Ireland with their family, mid-1800s, right after the Civil War. These two sisters from Ireland immigrate to the United States to find their brother, who went over to the United States a few years earlier to make some money in order to send back to their family in Ireland. Now, these two are the only ones left after the potato famine and all the food scarcity in Ireland, so they are looking to reunite with their brother and find a new path in America. They end up traveling south to Tennessee to a mansion, which is the last place that they have a letter from him. This ends up being the spot where they meet a young and dashing gentleman who is a member of the brand new Secret Service. So there are 10 gentlemen in the Secret Service, and they are currently traveling around the United States to identify counterfeiters, which were apparently very prominent at the time of this post-Civil War era, and it was causing significant hardship on the United States economy. So it was really, really interesting not only to read about that, but to see how these stories overlapped. He ends up going undercover and being hired at this estate where the girls are going to visit. Her books are so well done. You really get a fully immersive historical experience. This is a combination of historical fiction, historical romance, some Christian fiction, but overall you just feel like history comes alive with her books. Like, I love reading her books because I feel like I've been transported to that day and age where these people that just seem like far off black and white pictures that we can look at today now are coming to life, and we're immersed into this world and see how this group of people are starting to bounce back as well as make the world a more inclusive place. This book was so good. I might have cried a little bit at the end because this romance was so touching. But what's coolest about this is that this is based on a real place. So the landowners, the estate owners, and the estate itself were all really there, really existed. It's really neat that you can go and visit the Carnton Mansion, which is in Franklin, Tennessee. I really enjoyed learning about this because it's not a location that I was familiar with, but this is where the bloodiest battle of the South in the Civil War occurred. So I got to learn some more information about this era. Bottom line, this romance is so good. So good. Thoroughly enjoyed it and just loved reading this story. And I could not put this book down. I just did not want to put it down until it was done and I saw how everything was concluded. So thoroughly enjoyed this. I don't even have my copy here right now because I already lent it to someone else. This is the second in her Carnton Mansion series. Thoroughly enjoyed this story. Would love to go visit this place someday, which is so cool that it's based on a place that really exists. And a great look into history and what we can learn from history. That wraps up my books for the month of February. I hope that you found some new books to maybe check out from this list. Let me know in the comments what your favorite books from the month of February are, and keep reading, and I hope you find something that brings some sunshine to your day, because we all need that book that just brightens our day. So I hope you find that, and I look forward to chatting with you guys soon. Have a great day!